What are some very creepy facts? The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Andes, arrested and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There he was reviewed, declared to be sane and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Since he was released in 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. He is supposed to be 71 years old at present. He is known for being the most prolific killer ever. There is a genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. When tissue is damaged, it is replaced with bone. Growths form underneath their skin and their joints lock solid, so over time those affected slowly become encased in a prison of bone just beneath their own skin. They usually have to choose between sitting or standing up for the rest of their life. By the end of their life they have to drink every meal through a straw and can barely move. Your eyes have a separate immune system from the rest of your body. If they get damaged in such a way that it affects anything other than your eyes, your regular immune system can attack the damage and will not recognize them, meaning your own body can permanently blind you. What's worse, your body cannot tell the difference between either eye. If one of them gets infected or damaged, your immune system can attack your healthy eye and take away your sight entirely. Rosemary Kennedy was JFK's sister. She suffered from oxygen deprivation at birth, and that unfortunately stunted her mental growth. She had a pretty decent childhood, but as she grew older she began to act out, afraid that her behavior would risk his political career. Her father, Joseph, agreed to have her lobotomized. Her mother, Rose, was against it and forbade him from doing it, so he did it behind her back when she went on a trip. After the operation, Rosemary's already low IQ was lowered even further, to the point she could no longer walk or communicate. Her family had her locked up in an institution and basically disowned her. They never visited and never publicly acknowledged her anymore. Rosemary died at the age of 86. Her mother never forgave her husband for what he had done. Remember that bath salts cannibal guy from a couple years back? He wasn't high on bath salts when he did that. That was just media speculation and bullsh. They only found pot in his system during the autopsy. We still have no idea why he flipped out. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story. Moby Dick avoided islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this bypass, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. You know what's even creepier? 2 of the sailors were later rescued by an American ship. They were alone at sea for so long and had to cannibalize their crewmates to survive. When they saw their rescuers, they immediately stashed bones in their pockets. They didn't seem to care that they were rescued. They were obsessed with the bones of their fallen crewmates, so they can suck on the bone marrows. Even after they were on board the ship, they refused to depart from the bones and would even attack anyone who would come close. Cannibals find the palm of the hand the tastiest. Jokes on them. I had my dick in my hand before. A fire whirl can go as big as an EF3 tornado. In 1923, such happened in Japan during an earthquake. The son of a bee killed 38,000 people in less than 15 minutes. They got hit by a tornado that was on fire in the middle of an earthquake that caused a tsunami, all while surrounded by firestorms. Elmer McCurdy was a failed Old West outlaw. His preserved body was put on display in a traveling carnival, and years later he was eventually assumed to be a mannequin until he was used on set for the TV show The $6 Million Man. His arm accidentally fell off during the shoot, revealing bone and muscle and that he was a corpse, not a mannequin. The guy died in 1911, but it was only in 1976, 65 years later, that they discovered he wasn't a mannequin, but a petrified corpse covered in wax. This is creepy indeed. After raping his blindfolded victims, the Golden State Killer would be super duper quiet and pretend like he was gone, and right when the poor victims would start to move towards the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the effing shout at them. After listening to the many hours of his crimes being listened in court today, this is just a cherry on the horrible cake that is D'Angelo. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, They realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. That's actually pretty neat. I'd like to subscribe to Crow Facts, thanks. Thank you for subscribing to Crow Facts. Did you know that crows can speak English? Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I am cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately alligators cannot. So that's how you tell them apart. Yeah, but now I'm confused how to tell a horse and crocodile apart. Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approx 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive. All whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. The really creepy thing about this is one story of a guy who got stung, got CPR performed on him and survived, but went blind because he was lying on his back, eyes open, unable to blink because of the paralysis, staring into the sun. Imagine lying there, unable to move, unable to communicate, the sun slowly burning out your eyes and you can't shut them. Imagine lying there, unable to move, unable to communicate, the sun slowly burning out your eyes and you can't shut them. No, I don't think I will. The US has lost 6 nuclear warheads in total. Your brain can play tricks on you to make you see monsters in the mirror, called the Troxler effect. The Troxler effect is an optical illusion that affects how you perceive things, both visually and mentally. I once read that you should play dead if a bear attacks you, unless they start licking your wounds because that means they plan to eat you. That still haunts me to this day. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, grizzly, lie down. And if it's white, say goodnight. The astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger most likely didn't die until they hit the water miles below the initial explosion. Astronaut and NASA lead accident investigator Robert Overmeyer said, "I not only flew with Dick Scobie, STS-51L commander, we owned a plane together, and I know Scob did everything he could to save his crew. Scob fought for any and every edge to survive. He flew that ship without wings all the way down. They were alive. If the sun exploded right now, you would be blissfully unaware of it for just over 8 minutes while the energy travels at the speed of light to get to you. I hope it explodes at nighttime just to be safe." There's a spider that gives you a 3H long boner before you die from its bite. Edit. The boner it gives you is very painful. Die hard. If it bites you, you might as well dick slap it into next week. It wasn't until 1987 that the American Academy of Pediatrics declared it unethical to operate on newborns without anesthesia. Until surprisingly recently, the medical community felt it would be dangerous to give infants anesthesia and or believed that they didn't feel pain. Thank God I was born in 1987. Polar bears are the only animals that are thought to actively hunt humans. The human body can be drained of blood in 8.6 seconds given adequate vacuuming systems. Not everyone can afford a Dyson. Most people smell different when they're awake. That's my favorite thing to whisper. Since 1900, over 13,000 people have been murdered by serial killers in the USA. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Well, that escalated quickly. If Reddit has taught me anything, it's that necrophilia is inevitable. There are upwards of 300 active serial killers in the world. Seems low, honestly. 300 is a lot, but out of 8 billion, famous last words though, known to be active. Think about how many people go missing and are never found. The part that's insane to me is that people like BTK and Willie Picton were caught post 2000, but were active for a long time, decades prior. To me that means there have to be some people out there today that have a high body count and haven't been caught yet. A single tiger has killed over 436 people in India. Sense of impending doom is an actual symptom that often precedes your death, usually in cases of heart attack. Very creepy for some of us that suffer from anxiety and panic attacks to begin with. Both share that symptom. I have a heart condition, and sometimes I'll feel a weird beat. Then I will feel that horrible sense of impending doom. It is such a horrible feeling. Since 2007, At least 20 detached human feet have been found on the coasts of the Salish Sea, and then there's the hands with 27 pairs of them. Of course, Kira is the first comment on the post. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. As a fish, there isn't a cure and it sucks. I keep saying stuff I don't mean to say. According to Abe Lincoln's bodyguard Crook, he said Lincoln had a dream about his own assassination 3 nights in a row before he was killed. Crook told Lincoln not to go on that fateful night, and all Lincoln said was goodbye. Crook before he went to the play. This was very odd as Lincoln always said, good night not goodbye. The last witness to Lincoln's assassination was interviewed on TV in the 1950s. Hearing is the last thing to go after you die. You just might hear the paramedics and firefighters call off CPR. You know, that's actually kinda nice. You know that if ever you have someone dying in your arms, they are hearing you as they die. You know comforting them is working. Unless they have hearing damage, and that sucks. You might know that you are too far gone, and that you will die. Well, if hearing is the last thing to go, your brain probably isn't doing much thinking about anything at that point. God, I think this is the worst one so far. Mount Everest is covered in frozen corpses because removing them is very unsafe and time consuming. They are easily viewed from the climbing routes and some are used as trail markers. What's odd is that although the bodies are prominent, in some cases there is no consensus on their identity. Like over the years 2 different people with a similar description didn't return from their Everest climb. And we know the body is probably one of them, but not sure which. Or is it more creepy that some of the bodies are indeed identified, and somewhere out there is a family who knows full well that their loved one's remains are a landmark on the world's most famous mountain? Turn out green boots. The origins of vampires as we know them. Basically your body has gas buildup when you die. I'm not medically inclined enough to explain why. Basically the gas has to escape somehow, and so it would pass through the vocal cords in the throat. This creates the low moan that makes the body sound as if it was in pain. The people back then had no idea what was happening and random bodies would just start moaning in pain. And thus they believed that the bodies were rising from the dead, and when stabbed, the gas escaped otherwise, thus leading to the belief that the only way to stop a vampire was to stab a dead body in the chest. This also led to a lot of strange burials. That is the man that was buried in a stone wall to prevent him from rising from the dead. I can't really blame them. I'd be freaked out too if a corpse suddenly started to make sounds. Creepy for some, but I find stuff like that fascinating. There's documentaries on YT talking about it. I highly recommend them. Vampires don't moan. They say blah blah blah. CNN has had a pre-recorded broadcast from the 90s which they will premiere during the end of the world. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no antivenin and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. Cone snails are pretty freaky. Some of the most deadly ones can kill you in 30 minutes or less after they sting you. Their shells are super pretty too, so any beachcomber should be aware of these creatures and know how to pick up a shell carefully just in case someone might still be inside, till there are killer snails. From Atlas Obscura by Fodder, Thurus, and Morton, Necropants, reader's discretion advised. In Iceland, a long time ago, 17th C, friends followed complex rules to obtain a dead man's skin to turn them into pants. You had to get permission from the dude to use his skin after he kicked the bucket. You would then wait until burial formalities concluded. You would rob the shout of your buddy's grave. You would cut the waist and peel the bottom half of the body off in one perfect flay. You would then steal a coin from a poor widow, preferably your butts. Place the coin in the scrotum of the necropants to attract cosmic specifically more wealth in life, and leave the groin full of coins at all times. Pass that down to your kid. Fun fact, the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft has a pair on display for all of us sickos to gawk at. Necropants had me laughing, but it was downhill from there. Albert Fish, the serial killer, loved eating poop. I feel like that's the least creepy thing about Albert Fish. Human brains when they dry out smell like cat piss, that stinky ammonia smell. Worked in an ER for 17 years in CT. Had a gunshot to the head come in and a chunk fell onto my shoe and didn't notice. While driving home was like, WTF, did my cat piss in the car or something? Went to take my shoes off and there was Hey buddy, I think you stepped in some brain matter. I once knelt next to the interstate looking into a guy's open skull for 45 minutes waiting for an ambulance to show up. I didn't notice a smell. His teeth scattered around my knees were what really stuck with me. I dreamed I was wading through teeth for months. People don't take their anti-malarial drugs when they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the antimalarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it. But I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it and they all say the same thing, it is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours. And each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you. Sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. We lost our anti-malarial drugs for a period of 2 weeks when we visited India about 20 years ago. I was hospitalized with malaria 9 months after we came back. The stonefish, an incredibly venomous fish living in tropical waters mostly off the coast of Australia and parts of us, can cause pain that only escalates with time. Eventually the pain will subside, but even after the barb is removed, patients have reported increasing pain 12+ hours later. Without antivenom or denaturing the venom with excessive heat, the pain builds and builds until the patients request euthanasia. Its spines hold the venom, hidden in its dorsal fins. Aboriginals living around the Great Barrier Reef have corroborees, large gatherings, and will during these gatherings hold reenactments of people being stung by this monster, for what I assume is either amusement, learning, or both. Pigs will eat anything. There are stories of pigs entering farmhouses and eating newborn humans. A black mamba is the fastest snake which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 km/h. They have neurotoxins which are fast acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. When I went on a safari, the guide had no problem driving by the family of lions, cougars, crazy hippos, everything else we saw. However, when he spotted a black mamba, this incredible fear came over his face. The snake was right in the middle of the dirt road and he wouldn't even drive past it. We were in one of those open Jeep safari things. The guide was so frightened that he just zoomed in reverse and got away so quickly. He said they can jump up in the car and do all kinds of crazy things. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he was genuinely afraid and we got out of that area so fast. If you begin to display symptoms of rabies, you will go crazy and die. There's no cure. Your brain will slowly melt until you're dead. The second you get bitten by anything, you should literally speed to the hospital. Unless you don't notice because you were bitten by a tiny infected bat with tiny teeth. You didn't feel the pinch because it happened while you were asleep in a hammock outside. Make sure to read the bottom, friends. Men who are hanged get a death erection, known as rigor erectus. Pretty awkward for the family, I assume. This is the one time I'd advocate using hung instead of hanged. They said you were hung, and they were right. More than 7,000 people die annually due to the doctor's bad handwriting. That doctor needs to start typing or something. Ridiculous. Serial killer Richard Chase took any unlocked door as an invitation to come inside. He thought he was a vampire. This is also not the worst fact about this case. This is the example I use every time my husband keeps the door unlocked. I need to start using this with my husband. He leaves the damn door unlocked all the time. The reason dogs like squeaky toys is because the squeak reminds them of small animals dying. Sometimes an Amber Alert causes kidnappers to panic and kill the kid immediately. They used real corpses in the 1982 film Poltergeist for the ending pool scene. The actress did not know until after the scene was filmed, not just Poltergeist, but up until the last few decades actual skeletons and bodies were used in Hollywood productions simply because it was cheaper than hiring prop guys to do it. Any old movie you watch, chances are the skeletons are real because you could saunter into any old medical supply store and buy a whole disused skeleton from a university medical department for a reasonable price. At roughly 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, a body takes 2-4 hours to be ash. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy, but as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. There are many studies that show they don't like human contact and will clean themselves rigorously if they touch us. Our skin is very oily and can suffocate the breathing holes in their carapace, so we are the creepy fact to cockroaches. Nice. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish, it has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. Holy cow, thanks for the awards. And wow, like 50 people drew a connection to Made in Abyss. Never even heard of it before, but maybe I'll check it out now. OMG, now I feel terrible for them. 3,000 foot deep pulled up by fishers. Who the hell is fishing 3,000 plus feet deep? Now I'm sad for the blobfishes. Imagine being taken 5,000 miles under the ocean, having your skull be crushed by the immense pressure, then being called the ugliest mother effer alive. Space aliens pick up humans and violently yank them into space. Humans explode. Space aliens, haha, look at their stupid faces. It was once discovered that a fir tree was growing inside a human body. Artyom Sidorkin went to the doctor suspecting something wrong with his lungs. The doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but turns out he had inhaled a fir tree seed which had sprouted and had begun growing in his lungs. He also had a watermelon and a gum tree in there. If you stifle a sneeze, there's a chance you can damage organs in your head, including eye blood vessels, rupturing your eardrums, and possibly rupture a brain aneurysm, which means there's a small chance stifling a sneeze can kill you. Better to be the loud A with the sneeze that can be heard around the world than a dead loud A cause someone told you to stifle that sneeze. An elephant masturbates by slapping its penis on itself. Don't we all? Not creepy. I also masturbate by slapping my penis on an elephant. Ducks become cannibals due to boredom. Of all effing reasons, they can only be stopped by cutting off their mouths. Don't F with ducks. Quackers whack. If you're in a boat directly over the deepest point of the Marianas Trench, and you have a passenger jet cruising at 30,000 feet above you, you are closer to the jet than to the bottom of the ocean. If you live to age 70, you will have shed around 105 pounds of skin. Cool. At least there's one thing to look forward to when I'm 70. Can't wait to freak everyone out when it happens. Make sure to have a huge party and give a speech right before it happens, like Bilbo before he put on the ring to freak everyone out. There was a speech made for Apollo 11 if they were to die on the moon. Side fact, if it were to happen, people would look up at the moon knowing that that crew died there and their bodies would rest there till the end of time. Not forgetting that the ocean is somewhat like this. Many people died there too, at the very depths of the sea. Also, their bodies would not have decomposed because the moon has no oxygen. Instead they would become mummies. Ancient Egyptians hate him.